What is going on, guys? Welcome to Extreme Daily Drivers. Thanks so much for stopping by the garage. I'm Brandon, and today I'm going to show you how to install a Skunk2 intake, a Radium fuel rail, and the eBay oversized throttle body for your NA Miata. Check it out, man. Holy cow, this was a marathon, dude. If you want to do this job, you want to put this awesome intake on, man, you better pack a lunch. It takes a long time to do. You basically got to uninstall the entire car to make it fit. But once it's on there, it's totally rad. This is not an easy job, man. It takes a long time to do. I was shocked by how long it took to do. But in my opinion, the outcome's worth it. Stay tuned to the end of the video. We're actually taking this car for a rip. But let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so step one kind of goes without saying, but you got to make sure you disconnect your battery. We're going to be messing with a starter, and I wouldn't want this thing to jump start on you or for you to shock yourself or anything like that. So just go ahead and disconnect that battery. Step number two is remove everything, dude. Get rid of that intake, get rid of that old fuel rail, pull those injectors off, check those seals on those injectors, make sure they're good. If they're not, link down in the description. Get yourself some seals for $5 off of Amazon and replace them, because the last thing you want is a leak when you get all finished installing everything. So you're gonna find when you go ahead to pull off that old throttle body that there are gonna be some coolant lines leading to the head off of the throttle body. You're gonna wanna go ahead and disconnect those guys. You're gonna have to close up those holes with something. I recommend using this guy. Got this off of Amazon. A whole bunch of different sizes in here. I'll put a link down in the description. Basically, these guys can fit over basically anything. You can put a zip tie on it if you want, make sure it's nice and tight, or you can go ahead and use a worm gear. But for the most part, these things will fit snug enough that you won't have to worry about them. All right, now that we got the intake removed, we got the fuel rail removed, we got the fuel injectors removed, we have our throttle body removed off of our intake. Now what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna mess with the starter. Now, if you have a 94 and 97 like I do, you're gonna have a kind of stupid bracket that looks like this. Boom. Okay, now this guy is annoying. He's totally unnecessary. Just get rid of him because your intake will not fit with this guy installed. So not only do you have to get rid of this guy, but the wires going to your starter, they're at an angle, kind of on a diagonal like this. You have to rotate them so that they're flat. If you don't do this, you're gonna have issues with your intake grounding out on top of your starter wire. Okay, now your starter is good. Now, believe it or not, we gotta remove the alternator. That's right, we have to get the alternator out of here to make room for us to actually access the bolts that hold the Skunk2 intake in. So yeah, man, that thing's gotta go. So hey, we're not actually done yet, man. The oil filter, it's gotta go. That's right, I know it's hard to believe. Oil filter out of here. There's no room underneath this intake to tighten any bolts, so the oil filter's gotta go. Drain that oil, pull that oil filter off, and one last thing to remove. If you actually have a working oil pressure gauge, you're gonna have a giant sending unit, okay? And that sending unit, it's gotta go. You gotta take it off. We're gonna reinstall all this stuff, but not until after we finish installing the intake. All right, so now let's talk about vacuum lines leading to the intake. You're gonna notice that the Skunk2 intake has a lot less outputs than your stock intake. So you get a little bag full of adapters, and for the most part, they work out great. So you're gonna want probably a vacuum line. If you're like me, I'm running Mega Squirt. That's probably one of the reasons why my engine bay looks a lot different than yours, is I'm running Mega Squirt. It allows me to delete a whole bunch of crap that just looks ugly and just gets in the way. So I need a vacuum line run to Mega Squirt. I got the little bung to do that. Then they give you a blank that goes right next to that vacuum line. And then here in the rear, they give you a blank, and then they give you one of these. This guy's kind of annoying because it's straight, and we need to actually have vacuum coming off of here going to either our PVC valve or, in my case, my little catch can. So I went to the hardware store and got a little 3/8 elbow, threaded it in there, and we're good to go. All right, we're finally ready to go ahead and install the intake. We got everything out of the way. We got our little vacuum ports installed. Let me show you a really important part when it comes to installing the intake. Also, I should have mentioned, keep in mind, I don't have any studs on my engine. I removed all the studs because they're ugly, and I always want to use pretty bolts. So if my bolts look different than your bolts, it's because I removed all the studs, just use regular bolts. You're gonna have studs on yours, and you can reuse those, that's fine. But that's gonna be the difference, kind of what you see here. But anyway, I wanna show you this because it's killer important, dude. So the Skunk2 intake is gonna have two sets of holes. It's gonna have holes on top and holes on the bottom. Now you cannot see the holes on the bottom right now because my bolt is kind of blocking that angle. But it's real important. If you have a 94 to 97, you're gonna use the top bolts. If you have a 99 to what is it, like 06 or something like that, you're going to use the bottom bolts. It's going to be easy for you guys to understand here on the Skunk2 intake manifold gasket. By the way, don't use this. It's terrible, apparently. Everything I read online says it fails. Just use your OEM gasket. But you can see here that there are two sets of bolts, top and bottom, okay? So again, you're going to want to use the top on the 94 to 97 and the bottom for the 99 and up. All right, finally, you got the intake installed. Man, those bolts are really, really hard to get to, especially the ones in the back. And the only way that I was able to get to that one in the back was by going to Amazon, link down in the description, and getting myself a $20 set of these S wrenches. These things are pretty cool because they double. This is like a 12mm and a 13. So although you only get 5 wrenches, you actually are going all the way from 10 to 19mm in coverage. So using one of these guys, I was able to kind of get under there and snake it all around to tighten the intake on the bottom. And so the first thing you're going to want to hook up once you get your intake installed is actually the vacuum line for the brake booster. You're going to have to trim it a little bit, but it's really no big deal. Take off like an inch and it'll bolt right back up to the back of the intake. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to relocate some grounding wires. So there's some grounding wires that were going to your intake, your OEM intake. You're going to want to go ahead and reground those somewhere. Now, I couldn't find a place to ground them on the actual intake. So I chose 2 spots right here on the actual chassis. And whenever you're grounding something, I use these cool little stainless button head bolts too. I don't know how well you can see that, but they're super rad. Anyway, whenever you're grounding something like this to paint, you always want to make sure that you clear away the paint so you make a good ground. An easy way to do this is with a star washer. This is a star washer. So basically what happens is as you tighten the bolt down, this kind of grinds in through the paint. They're like 30 cents at the hardware store. I always have a bunch laying around in case I have to make a ground for this reason. All right, now let's talk fuel rail. Now, you don't have to buy this fuel rail. I mean, this intake will work with any OEM fuel rail. But, dude, if we're doing all this work, let's go ahead and make it look totally awesome. That's my opinion. So yeah, go to Fab9, link down in the description. Get yourself one of these Radium fuel rails. They're totally awesome. They're a little bit tricky to purchase because the fuel rail itself is like 120 bucks or something like that. And you're like, oh, that's not so bad. And then you realize that it comes with like absolutely nothing. So you have to get yourself like the Radium fuel rail accessory kit. It's totally necessary. You have to buy it. It comes with these AN kind of fitting things here. Yeah, you have to get it. So anyway, installing this, totally straightforward. Bolts on. Now again, two sets of holes, guys. Use the top ones if you got a 94 to 97. Use the bottom ones if you got a 99 and up. Now, Radium actually has really, really good directions on their website on how to install this, and I followed them, and they were great. But one thing that kind of threw me off was that they wanted me to install the fuel pressure regulator right here, kind of like it sits on the OEM fuel rail. But I didn't understand why. Like, it just didn't make sense to me to put it there. And it was kind of ugly because it's not really like a good-looking piece. So I also had this awesome little fuel gauge, and I wanted to install it directly on the fuel rail because that's kind of the best way to do it. And they have a port to do it. Stupid thing is yes, there's a port to do it. But when you buy the fuel rail accessory kit, it doesn't come with a fitting to allow you to put a fuel gauge on it. So it's kind of dumb. So anyway, I went on Amazon, $7 or something like that. AN fuel rail piece, 8mm, whatever the heck the size is, linked down in the description. And I went ahead and was able to install that fuel gauge. And it looks totally awesome and it totally works. Another thing make sure you have if you're gonna do that is make sure you have the Teflon tape that's good for fuel. It's gonna be yellow. Link down in the description, unless you want fuel all over your freaking engine bay. Now I took this opportunity when installing the new fuel rail to kind of rerun my injector wiring. I wrapped everything in that like awesome wire harness wrap. It's fireproof. It doesn't get sticky. It's totally awesome. I'll have a link down in the description because basically I wrapped every wire in here with this stuff and it's great stuff. But yeah, wrapped everything up, tucked it back between the head and the fuel rail. I think it's gonna be fine there. Nothing's binding or anything like that. And it's just a super clean look. No more kind of silly wiring down here to look ugly. So now let's talk throttle bodies, okay? So 2 options that you can do. You can buy the Skunk2 throttle body, or you can go ahead and buy the eBay throttle body, which is what I did. The Skunk2 throttle body is like 250 bucks. You catch it on sale every now and then, it's $239. Or you can get the eBay throttle body, which is essentially just a knockoff of the Skunk2 for like $85 shipped. So that's the route I went. And one of the reasons I went that route is because if you don't know anything about Skunk2 throttle bodies, whether it's for a Miata or it's for a Honda, they have a tendency to stick open. And you have to actually do some kind of drilling to them and move a spring around so they don't stick. The eBay one doesn't have that issue. eBay one kind of has its own issues. But nothing that can't be kind of fixed. So either way you go, neither way is going to be perfect. They're both the same size. You're not going to get any kind of horsepower gain using Skunk2 or using the eBay one. And I just went with eBay because it's just cheaper and I didn't want to have to move the spring around. So the eBay throttle body is going to come with a package. It's going to have everything in there that you need, gaskets, adapter plates, and so on. First thing you're going to do is you're going to want to start disassembling your OEM intake. You want to take off the IAC off of the bottom of it, and you're going to want to take off your TPS, your throttle pressure sensor, off of the side. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to want to transfer that throttle pressure sensor over to the new throttle body. There's a little gear that fits in there. Doesn't matter which way you put it. Put that gear in. Then you're going to take a cover, put the cover over it, and then you're going to install your throttle body over it, and then with the screws provided, tighten everything down. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and install the adapter plate onto the brand new throttle body, and that's going to go on in a kind of a weird series. Unfortunately, with the eBay throttle body, there are no directions, so you got to figure it out. I hope this video is helpful. So you got to put on a gasket and then a bracket, and then tighten that all down before you install the IAC. Now comes the time where we mount the actual plate to the bottom of the throttle body, and the hardware they provide, it works and it doesn't. They basically give you two kind of short bolts. That one works because it winds up in a cavity of the throttle body here. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So this one here by my thumb, that guy's fine because he's inside of a cavity inside the throttle body. However, this one right here, it looks mangled, and that is because I had to actually grind it down to make it flush. If we look at the profile of this once it's mounted, again, you can see this one protrudes, but if you don't file down this guy, he will protrude as well, which will create a massive vacuum leak. Ask me how I know. Now, you can reuse your original gasket if it's in good shape. I didn't know that mine was or not, so I went ahead and ordered a new one from Mazda. And it's a little bit better than mine, but it's not that much better, so I don't know how necessary this step is. It is $30 for this silly little IAC gasket. Here is the part number for you guys, and of course I'll have everything down in the description once again. But yeah, you can order yourself one of those if you want, or you can reuse the one that you had. One last thing on these bolts, make sure you put some thread locker on them. Ask me how I know. All right, now this is a good opportunity to upgrade your hardware on your throttle body. You can reuse this 30-year-old Phillips set if you want, that's totally mangled and destroyed because it's been on and off a couple times. Or you can go to the hardware store like yours truly and get some nice stainless Allen head bolts. Super cool, super clean, match the rest of the build, and they look awesome. And once you get it all put together, you attach it to the car with the provided hardware, and it looks totally sweet, man. I mean, check this thing out. It's totally awesome. All right, we got our intake installed. We've got our fuel rail installed. We have our throttle body installed. Now we got to hook the throttle body up. And it's not that simple, okay? You don't just go ahead and throw on the throttle cable and call it a day. A couple of things you need to know. If you have a 90 to 93, like I do, this is a 91 Miata, the throttle cable is too long, okay? I tried to make it work. I didn't want to have to replace the throttle cable, but alas, I had to, okay? So throttle cable's got to be a 94 to 97, all right? So go ahead and install that guy. You got to do it. Now the next thing we got to talk about is the bracket that comes with the Skunk2 intake. The thing stinks. So this is the guy I'm talking about. This is the guy that comes with the Skunk2 intake, and it may look fine to you. It may look okay, but trust me, do a Google search and you will see countless failures with this thing. And just feeling it in your hand, man, it feels cheap. It feels super cheap. So do what I did. Go to Facebook. That's right. Go to Facebook. Find the guy that builds these things. They're super rad. He makes them out of aluminum, and they fit perfectly, and dude, they're super robust. Link down in the description to the dude's name who makes these things. Look him up on one of the Facebook Miata groups and get one of these guys. Do not use the Skunk2 throttle cable holder thing. So we're almost finished here, man. One little tip that I want to tell you guys because I think it's kind of important, and this is just something I came up with, so let me know down in the comments if I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But, you know, you may have to adjust the tension on your throttle cable a little bit. So this is kind of how I did it. When I push down on this, I want to hear a nice snap. I want to hear that noise. Listen to that. You hear that? That thing is bottoming out on this, and that's what you want to hear. So you want to make sure that it's not like pulled off too much. You see how it is pulled off there? I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, you want to make sure that thing is clicking loud and that this isn't crazy tight. And it needs to be tight, but not crazy tight. I hope that helps. So that's pretty much it. Hook the battery up, jump inside the car, turn your key halfway, let the fuel pump go ahead and pump fuel through. Come over here, check to make sure you don't have any leaks. Go ahead and crank the car up, and it should start right up. So if you have any issues with idle, this is the guy you want to mess with a little bit. Start off with it closed. I have mine out a quarter turn, and the car seems pretty happy like that. So that's it, guys. Congratulations. You just installed the Skunk2 intake on a Miata. Now, let's take the car out for a rip and see how it performs. Fully programmable ECU. So this week we're going to be taking this guy over to my buddy Junior for him to hook his laptop up to it and make sure that everything's happy with it. But it definitely feels more responsive. Oh, yeah. It definitely sounds different, right?
Yes, it does.
It sounds awesome. And
it feels so good. Like it's just like amazing.
It does. It feels great. It just, you know, before guys, oh, I'm starting to get some raindrops. Before, the car felt like a 30-year-old car. Now it feels like a brand new car, like literally. The new engine mounts we installed, the wrapped header, and now this intake. This car is primo, dude. It is primo. Oh, it's really starting to rain. We're gonna have to put our top up here in a minute, maybe.
Yeah. You know where you really feel it is when you stop.
Right.
It's a different car completely.
But you know that Skunk2 intake's there when you hit that gas pedal. Wow, lots of fun, man. Lots of fun.
This car feels a lot more fun.
So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this tutorial helped you. And make sure you like, make sure you sub. We're done with the Miata for a long time. So anyway, the Commander is next. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Later.